Yo, what is up, 49er fans? This is Jack Hammer from the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and I have Jessie Naylor here with me. You are tuned in to the Hammer and Nayls Show, one of the, I think one of the funner shows that happens on 49ers YouTube. Jessie and I come at this from very different angles. I cover the team, so I'm not much of a fan when it comes to that angle of it. Jessie is very much a fan, and it makes a lot of fun. How you doing, Jessie? I know you're out in Florida right now.
Yeah. Listen, hunkering down, waiting for this storm to hit us and praying for the best. But sports is the ultimate getaway. And so I'm happy that right now, at least, we've got power and I can do the show with you.
Hey, what better way to be locked in the house? You get to do football,
Hey,
yeah. Exactly. This is the perfect time right here. We got some great people over in the comment section. We got Archon Jedi over there. He says Hammer time. Ryan Anthony asks if he's early. JVid76. We got Lucas Pesci. He's a member of the Toolbox. He comes to us from Austria. Lucas, I already asked. We got your question from yesterday. I told you we were going to ask Jessie this question. We're going to get to that today on our show. So thank you very much. And then we have the Sentinel who says, here we go. So let's get into it. You know, Jessie and I come at this thing, like I said, from very different angles, but I think we both have very kind of similar opinions on the way this game went down on Sunday night. Well, let's start with you. Tell me what you thought of that amazing performance.
Dude, that was arguably the worst game I've ever watched. Like, just as a fan, I try to remove myself as even a 49er fan, but just a football fan. I am a big fan of low-scoring, defensive struggle type games. I felt like that was not that, though. That game was just an offensive disaster. Both defenses are good. I want to give them credit. Obviously, the 49ers defense is really damn good. I think the Broncos defense is good. But I think there were a lot of plays that were left on the field, really from both quarterbacks. And you could see that both quarterbacks were absolutely struggling that whole game. Neither one of them were in tune. They couldn't get it together. I felt like they both were missing throws that they would probably normally make. It was a weird game. And anytime 11-10, I think that's the second time in NFL history that's ever happened. That game was a disaster, Jack. It was one of the hardest games I have ever watched. I mean, there was points where, because I do the game on playback with David, and so we're watching the game live with the crowd watching with us. And we're like, dude, how do you even talk about this game without just having a chuckle? So it was a hard game to watch. That's my first thought.
Yeah, here's the thing: is like I'm older than you, so you might not remember 1997 when Jim Druckenmiller led the 49ers into St. Louis to take on the Rams. But if you watch that 1997 game between the 49ers and the Rams with Jim Druckenmiller as the starting quarterback in place of Steve Young that day, you know that game that we just watched on Sunday night was probably the worst game that we've seen of a 49er team. Maybe since then. Maybe Cody Pickett in Chicago might be worse. You know, remember that game? But it was just awful football. I mean, I enjoyed the game because it was close. It was interesting. I was having a good laugh because I'm sick in that way. But it was just like, you got to be kidding me. The defense was just balling out, and then you got the offense that has a quarterback that can't hit the broadside of a barn.
I'm sorry, but the safety pick six was the funniest thing I've probably ever seen in my entire life. I can't, like, and everybody saw it and thought the same exact thing. And then when Arlovsky tweeted out, like, I'm off the hook, was probably I was like, cue the circus music, please. Cue the circus music.
Yeah, no, that stuff's perfect for the Benny Hill theme song, right? If you just put that, you get your film breakdown with both of those things, because it takes about 30 seconds. So put that to the Yakety Sax song, and I think you got gold, because that people are saying that, Dan Arlovsky is off the hook or whatever, right? I think Jimmy's play was worse than Arlovsky's. I mean, I know Arlovsky ran along the end line the whole way of the end line, from like the goalpost to the sideline, but Jimmy Garoppolo steps on the end line, and not only does he step on the end line, he throws an interception. I'm sitting there watching it, and all I said was, he stepped on the end line. Oh my God. And then he throws the ball, and I'm like, well, shoot, at least he stepped on the end line. Saving himself 5 points right there.
It's even when he's bad, he's still a lucky SOB, that Jimmy Garoppolo, I gotta tell you.
You got to say, and then Adam comes in. He says, 1997. I wrote my first rhyme. I want to marry you is what I told my first dime. Oh, look at this. That's good.
Natural.
That's good.
You're a natural.
That's natural. Yeah. So I mean, the game from an offensive standpoint. I've got to give Kyle Shanahan credit for taking the blame on a couple of his play calls. Usually he doesn't do that, and he did that in this game. There was a couple of them, a few that were bad. But if I was Kyle Shanahan, I think I might have had a hard time not choking out Jimmy Garoppolo at halftime, because he was absolutely killing his team. I know we have the interception and we have the safety, but the first half was an absolute choke job by Jimmy Garoppolo.
Completely. And in the second half, though, too, Jack, because they had around the pick six safety that they had three really good starting positions. They started at their own 43. Then there was the pick six safety. Then they started at their 43 again. Then they started at the Denver 41. They left those three drives with 25 total yards and 3 points.
Yeah. I'm with you, because that was one of my storylines early in the game. Like through the first half, was the field position was awful for both teams, right? 49ers average starting field position the first half was their own 15. The Broncos were at their own 18. So you can understand why there wasn't a lot of points being put up by either side in one way, right? If you just take Jimmy Garoppolo's awful performance out, you just look at the field position, you're like, it makes sense that neither team's really, putting points on the board. Then in the second half, you get the ball in the 41 and you shit the bed. No, sorry, but twice, from the 40, the one at the 41 is even the worst one, though, because Kyle Shanahan has him wide open. He gives him a free runner in Jawan Jennings with nobody around him, and he throws a pass that looks like it was a duck that got shot in the rear end. I mean, it's just fluttering out there, and he's twisting and turning, and the ball takes so long to get there that by the time he catches it, he's getting hit by the safety. It's just awful. Awful.
And that was one of his better throws that game, because he did get. I'll say this: he got leveled. He stood in there and got leveled. I'll give him credit on that. I will. So I would say it was his gutsiest throw of the game. Maybe not the best throw of the game, but I would say it's his gutsiest throw of the game.
It was his best throw of the game was the one to Juszczyk down the left side.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. Yes,
that was his best one. But I mean, you go through it and. It was just awful for in a lot of different ways, and I guess for me let's switch gears just a little bit here. Let me ask you this question from just talking, instead of just saying how bad Jimmy Garoppolo is, because we both know it. Where does the offense go from here, in your opinion?
Man, no Trent Williams at the worst time. We know Trent Williams is going to miss some games, and just happens to be last year and this year is probably at the worst times in what possibly is a must-win game. I mean, about as must-win as you can get this early in the season. I think the offense just has to establish the running game. The biggest thing is this offense has to stay in third and short. They have to. Jimmy Garoppolo is not a guy that's going to get you in 3rd and 8 to 11 and make something happen out of that very often. They have to stay in that 3rd and short on schedule. Probably there. And I also think they're going to have to change some things up. This whole Deebo out of the backfield thing is really teams are figuring it out. Mm-hmm. Every time he lines up, they know what's coming for the most part. Every once in a while, they'll throw in a choice route or a Texas route, and that's a nice little wrinkle. But for the most part, teams know what's coming when Deebo's in the backfield. They can get him the ball, but probably better off doing it on the perimeter. That's a throw that Jimmy can make, although this week, not so much, but he can throw those screen passes on the perimeter for the most part. And I think with Jimmy not being able to spread the offense horizontally and maybe not even vertically, 10, 15 yards down the field, I think they can play that game 5 yards and in, and at least open up something for Jimmy Garoppolo and get him going. And just make the throws easy on him and stay on schedule. That is a must for this team.
Yeah, I agree. I look at this team and I'm like, what you just said is really spot on. Defenses have figured out the Deebo Samuel in the backfield package.
Yeah.
Anytime he's in the backfield, you just wherever he moves around the field, watch the way the defense reacts to him moving, period, whether he's in the backfield or not. And when he's in the backfield, there's only so many ways he's going to go. There's only so many directions he can run the ball, especially when he's in the shotgun, because if he's on your right side, you pretty much know he's going to go to the left. And if he's on your left side, you pretty much know he's going to go to the right, unless it's a pass. There's only, they don't run counters very often out of the shotgun like that. And teams are overplaying it with the pressure off the backside that they're bringing and all these different things. And the 49ers don't have anything off of it. At least they haven't really shown it, the ability to have anything coming off of it right now, because I don't think they have, well, it starts off with the quarterback being able to put the ball in their hands, but they don't have anybody that scares the defense the way that Deebo Samuel does. They don't care about Brandon Ayuk. They don't care about George Kittle. They don't care about, well, they sure as hell don't care about the running backs, because those guys are awful. Well, we don't know anything about Jordan Mason, but we know that Jeff Wilson Jr. is not going to break one for 50 yards on you. So they're not worried about anybody beating them other than Deebo Samuel. And the 49ers right now don't have anything to come off of it to threaten your defense with.
Yeah, they don't. And another thing that I found interesting in that game, there's nothing that bugs me more than when a team goes empty set on first down. I hate that so much, because I don't mind going empty set, because I think it makes it easier on the quarterback really to make the reads. It's so much easier to know what's about to happen. But to do that on first down, you've basically eliminated any option that you're potentially running the ball. And so for me, I want to keep both options open to the defense in early downs if I can, as much as possible. Here or there, maybe, but it happened multiple times throughout that game. I'm like, I personally don't like letting the defense know exactly what you're about to do. I just think it makes it too easy on them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we need to see what Jordan Mason can do.
I agree.
We know what Jeff Wilson Jr. is. Jeff Wilson's a really good running back. He's a good running back. He's not a really good running back. He's a good running back, though. He's going to get you the tough yards. He had a couple of nice runs in that game, but what do you have, 75 yards on the game? 38 of those came on one carry, and another 18 came in the other. So of his 75 yards, 55 came on two carries. The other, whatever, 10, 12, 13 carries he had, he gained 20 yards the rest of the way.
Yep.
The 49ers offense as a whole, if you take out those two runs, gained, average 1.9 yards per attempt in the game, because Deebo Samuel's not running the ball well. He had the 150-yard bust last week in Seattle, but he hasn't ran the ball at the backfield very well at all. So I think they're missing a little bit of a playmaking element, but it really goes back. It starts with the quarterback, because, again, I'm working on my write-up piece. I did my film breakdown yesterday on YouTube. I'm doing my write-up piece of the film breakdown, and you just look through it, and you've got Deebo Samuel wide open out of a bunch formation. The quarterback's looking at him, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
right at him.
But here's the thing, Jesse. Even if he saw him, even if he threw it, it's not going to be a touchdown, because the guy can't throw the ball to save his life. So the 49ers are in a little bit of a pickle. I think maybe Jimmy Garoppolo is going to make me change my mind. But I will say this about Jimmy Garoppolo: when he throws the ball, watch the way he throws it. He never steps into it. He almost always throws with his feet parallel to the line of scrimmage, because he doesn't step into it. He's throwing with all of his upper body. So when he does that, he's bringing his left foot around. His feet are almost parallel. When you watch the throw that he made to Juszczyk, which was the one we both said was a better one, that ball, you see him get his left foot down a little bit more in front of him. And no kidding that when you actually use your lower half and your legs, you're going to throw a better ball. Let me ask you this. We didn't prep for this, but
real quick. I just want to make this point. I have text messages with my friend Adam, who's also a 49er fan, after the 2017 season, 5 games. Exactly what you just said. I go, Jimmy can be a really good quarterback. He has to fix this part of his game. Here we are 6 years later, and it's still a problem. So go ahead, ask the question.
No, you're right. It's who he is. It's just who he is. It's the way that he throws the ball. It's the way that it's just who he is, and we're kind of stuck with that. But I was asked, is there a possibility that we see Brock Purdy take over at some point this year? And I'll ask you the question. I have my opinion. I'll ask you yours. Do you think there's a possibility that Purdy gets into a game? Let's preface that by saying Garoppolo is not injured before it happens.
Man, That one's tough because I really do feel like Kyle Shanahan just rides with who he thinks is best, whether we think it's best or not. And once he makes a decision on a quarterback, that's who he's riding with. I find it really hard that he moves to Brock Purdy, maybe for, a quarter or something at the end of a game just to kind of mix things up. But unless Jimmy gets injured, I don't see it.
Okay, and also I'll give you my response when I was asked this question was I think that there could be a possibility where he comes off of him. If he continues to play the way that he played in the first half on Sunday night, if he continues to do that next week, and he maybe the week after that, like for a couple of weeks here, then I think he comes off of him. Remember, you got to remember, Kyle Shanahan wasn't worried about benching his backup when it was Nick Mullins or any of these other guys, right? Jimmy Garoppolo is now the backup. He's not the starter, so he's not the guy that's your long-term plan. So if he continues to screw this thing up and he continues to be the reason that the offense is failing, I think we'll see him make a move and go in that direction because it might take them to the point where they're, looks like they're out of playoff contention to do that. But I still think that there could be a possibility because if Garoppolo continues to play the way he played on Sunday night, this is going to be a short season for the 49ers.
It most certainly is. And God, what a change of events that would be, right? We had a chunk of this fan base calling for Jimmy because we didn't want to throw away a Super Bowl caliber team. And imagine that he's not even good enough to keep Purdy off the bench. That's a turn that I did not expect because even I, for what I think of Jimmy, have been very adamant that I believe he's a starting level quarterback in this league and that I would much rather see him over Purdy. We'll see if this continues, but if this is who we're going to get, I mean, how do you keep playing him? You might be right. You might be right about that one. I guess him being a backup does play into that a little bit more.
I think it plays into it, but again, it's kind of like last year in a way too. I mean, the way that I got there was kind of the same way that he would have gotten to Trey last year, right? He wouldn't have moved to Trey until the season was kind of out of. That's why it mattered that they beat the Rams and then they kind of went on their run. If they had lost to the Rams, I think at that point you would have seen Lance in the game as a starter. Maybe that's the way that this whole thing works out. But I just got to say I was pretty disappointed with the way that I mean even make that sound the way that it did when I said pretty, but I was pretty disappointed with the way that whole game played out. And as Tammy says here, agree, he needs to make things happen, but he needs to look at the whole field. Never even saw Debo wide open. I mean, again, that's going back into our discussion earlier, but they got to fix this thing. And I like your point earlier about the offensive line. I'm kind of all over the place. I need to stay on task, But going back to the original question about this team moving forward, no Trent Williams at left tackle. It's going to be interesting to see. McKivitz, I think, is going to be okay, but you're going to have some issues over there. Again, Jordan Mason, I want to see what he can do with the ball in his hands. I think you need to get him involved in this thing, and you just need to get your quarterback to start hitting people. And I think if they can do those things, the offense will turn.
I mean, Jimmy can have clunkers like this. And maybe this is kind of who he is now. I mean, if we really look at his last 6 or so, 8 games, really, other than the Falcons game, he hasn't looked good in a while. But I also got to believe that he's still better than what he put out on Sunday night. Like, it can't be this bad going forward forever. He's a better player than that. And they don't need much better. The defense is so damn good, Jack, that if they just had 5% more, they could win these games. They don't need a lot. They just need just a little bit. Give them something.
If you just don't fumble the ball at midfield, which leads to you having the ball backed up at your own 2-yard line, and then you step out of bounds. If you just hit one of your receivers when they're open, I mean, this game changes so quickly. And it would have been like that 1997 game that I referenced in the beginning when the 49ers won 15-12 and it was ugly as heck, right? If Garoppolo just makes a play, then we're talking about this game Still is an ugly game, but it's different because we're talking about it as an ugly loss, not so negatively as we're looking at it, right?
I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason. And Jack, maybe this, and when I say this, the Trey injury, maybe this is what was needed for fans to really just put the Jimmy thing to rest, right? Seeing him play a few games this year is enough to be like, okay, all right, we get it. We get why you moved on. Like, let's just turn the keys over to the kid and see what he is. Maybe everybody can get on board with that if we see enough of this. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that's, and you brought up but here's the thing, you brought it up, and I saw this on Twitter today, and it's something that I used to talk about when Garoppolo was a starting quarterback, was he starts off slow. His first games are usually not good. And then usually by around week 2 for him is the good week. Week 1 is week 2, yay, right? So if he follows the pattern, if he follows the Jimmy Garoppolo pattern, he's going to ball out on Monday night. Fingers are going to be in first place, and everybody's going to forget about this one. And we're going to be, yeah, woo, good, go Niners, and everything that you say about it. I'll even be able to go on Twitter and talk about how the 88 49ers did this and that, and people won't scream at me, right? So, it'll be interesting. Now, I got to ask you this. Let's transition because we're on different sides of this question. Mm-hmm. Kyle Shanahan. Let's talk a little bit about his performance and kind of where you think he is.
Yeah, and I want to be clear about this. I'm not saying like we got to get rid of Kyle. My frustration is that on social media, it seems like everybody breaks him down like he's an offensive coordinator, right? It's always the same things. Well, look at the plays he's designing. That's all fantastic. If he's an offensive coordinator, he can have those excuses. But much like a chef, right? If I have a chef and he's only a chef, and the food comes out terrible, I blame the chef. But in this instance, he's the chef and he's the guy shopping for the ingredients, right? So I can't just be like, well, it was the guy that shopped for the ingredients. The chef's fine. This guy shopping for ingredients. Well, that's also Kyle. So we have to look at Kyle as a head coach, good or bad, right? And that does go both ways because there are things that Kyle does really well. He develops coaches extremely well. He develops late round picks and undrafted players extremely well. Those are things he does really good as a head coach. But to me, he has too many head scratchers. And again, I know that this is a small blip, especially because there was no injury, but I tweeted it out in the moment just to make sure that people know I'm not going back after the fact. Why are you running Deebo Samuel to end the half when you have 86 yards to go? Like that's what we want to do a week after you just lost your starting quarterback. And now you're trying to throw your best weapon out there, who, by the way, got hurt earlier in this game. You're going to throw him out there and hope that he can break it 86 yards for a touchdown and run him right at the teeth of the D. Those little decisions to me irk me so much. And it gives me pause with Kyle because I feel like there are so many little things that I can point to. It's like, this guy's not progressing. He's not getting any better. He's not learning from his mistakes. He's doubling down. That's where I'm at with Kyle. I'm frustrated, but I also am wanting him to succeed. And to me, there's a couple ways this can go. If they're really bad this season, Jack, I actually think I will learn more about Kyle Shanahan if this team is bad than if it's good. And the reason I say that is bad teams, locker rooms start to separate, right? And if he can hold it all together, even if they're atrocious, that tells me that he's still got the pulse of this locker room. And that's very important to me. Plus, I know that Kyle Shanahan is the best chance for Trey Lance long-term to be successful, because if they bring in a new regime, they're not tied to Trey. There's a chance Trey is out of here and replaced. So I'm rooting for Kyle. I don't want him fired, but man, you got to show me something.
I love you, Jesse, and I'm so glad that you brought up that third down play call, because I know we talked about this on Twitter today. So I'm really glad that you brought that one up because I watched it. I didn't have a feeling one way or another about it. I was like, yeah, it's kind of a throwaway call, right? That's my feeling on it was it's, he decided he's going to go in at the half and he's just going to let it run out. And as I said to you on Twitter today, and a lot of folks on here probably don't follow us on Twitter, so they might not see the back and forth, but it's kind of the same thing as what he did in Chicago, right? Last year, where it's the end of the, well, in Chicago, it wasn't at the end of the half, though. It was 3rd and 19 in the middle of the third quarter. And you throw a little screen out to the left side and he busts it. And so that's the only thing that if I'm going to, that's from the coaching standpoint, I think that's the thought process is I'm going to give the ball to my playmaker. I'm going to see if I can get lucky and have him bust one right here. That's the only way that I can defend that call. I also don't really have the concern that you have when it comes to running Deebo Samuel. I think that Deebo's built to do those things. I just wish that he would fall to the ground instead of standing up and letting 10 guys hit him. But I think that he's built to, I've said this a few times, and probably to you too. Deebo Samuel is Ricky Waters. Mm-hmm. They're built the same. Yep. They play the game the same way. I think Deebo's a little more physical, but Ricky Waters was a wide receiver at Notre Dame before he became a running back, before he got drafted by the 49ers. And with Deebo, it's kind of been the same thing. He was a wide receiver, got drafted, and now he's playing running back, right?
Yeah.
So they're very similar. And, so anyway, with that play and that kind of thing, staying on that topic as far as Kyle Shanahan and the way that he utilizes Deebo, I don't have a worry I don't worry about that piece of it. I think, the other piece, is you do have to separate Kyle Shanahan, the offensive coordinator, from Kyle Shanahan, the head coach. I will give him one last piece of props before I kind of hammer on the negative side. He also gets credit for what this defense is doing because he's putting that together as well. Right? We both agree with that on that, I think. And I do agree with you. I think if you're looking at him, the issues with Kyle Shanahan and why Kyle Shanahan's teams are not getting over the hump is because he hasn't made the right choices at the quarterback spot. You don't like Jimmy Garoppolo, or you don't feel like that was a bad wording. You don't believe Jimmy Garoppolo is the guy to get the 49ers a Super Bowl ring. I don't think so either, based on history. He'd have to overcome 50, whatever, how many Super Bowls they've had, all of that history in order to do it, because there's never been a guy that's lost his first trip to the Super Bowl, that's come back, made it back to the Super Bowl, and then won it, let alone that isn't in the Hall of Fame. Everybody that's done that's in the Hall of Fame. There's only one quarterback that's ever lost in the Super Bowl, the first trip to the Super Bowl, and even made it back, who isn't in the Hall of Fame. The only guy that's done it that's not in the Hall of Fame at all is Craig Morton. He's the only quarterback that's lost in his first game in the Super Bowl, his first start, come back, started another Super Bowl, but isn't a Hall of Famer. Everybody else has been in there. And that's 50, whatever. I don't know how many Super Bowls.
But he didn't win it, right? So
who's that? Yes. No, you're right. No. Yeah, Craig Morton lost both times. He lost with the Cowboys, and he lost to the Cowboys with the Broncos. So I'm just saying, again, that goes back to the Jimmy thing, though. That's why I don't believe that he's going to have, if the 49ers are going to win the Super Bowl this year, they're going to have to overcome a lot of history. I didn't think they were going to win the Super Bowl Trey Lance either this year, just because of the history there at that spot too, with a first-year starter, that kind of thing. But at least with Trey Lance, you're building to the future, and we don't know where that is right now. So that's the thing when you look at Shanahan. If you're going to get on him, it's the failure to develop the quarterback position, and it's the failure to eliminate the little things that cause your teams to lose, like just the stupid boneheaded penalties that they get. I mean, Spencer Burford gets a lot of love because he's a rookie. He was awful on Sunday night. He was not good.
Yeah.
He jumped off sides. The next play he gives up a sack. I know that Jimmy steps out of bounds, and it's Jimmy's Garoppolo's fault for that whole play, but it starts because Spencer Burford gets beat one-on-one really quick in the middle of the line, and that guy gets in his face, and there's nowhere for him to go because the outside gets beat too. So I don't know. It's an interesting discussion when you look at Kyle Shanahan, because I probably, if you look at my stuff on Twitter, you probably think I'm a Shana stan. I'm not really. I think a lot of what he does as a head coach makes sense. And I'm talking a lot here, taking up a lot of your time.
No, you're fine.
From what you said earlier, as far as if he can keep this locker room intact, he'll show you something. That's partly why I feel the way that I do, because I felt like he did that last year, getting from 3-5 to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, I agree with that. But to me, I feel like this season has more on it, just slightly more. I feel like it might be a little bit more intense in that locker room because of the decision he made at the beginning of the season. I think there might be some contention there, and I could be wrong, but I just want to see it play out. And either way, we're going to learn something about Kyle. Either he's going to show it twice that he can pull this team from the depths and make the playoffs, which is also very impressive, or they're going to have a losing season and he's going to be able to keep it together, which would also be impressive in my eyes. And so I think two of the three options that could happen with this team and with Kyle Shanahan, he ends up looking really good in my eyes anyways. I don't know about everybody else. I can't speak for them, but for me, he would look really good in two of those three scenarios.
Yeah, so we'll see how this thing plays out with the season and kind of where it's going. And his defense has been good. He figured that side of it out. E. Kim with a good comment here. He says Eddie would be angry over what is on the field. He would want to fire someone for it. I think that you're right. I think he would. There was a topic on Twitter last week, right? Jessie Sapolu talked about how the media was at fault for Bill Walsh wanting to resign.
Yeah.
In reality, if anybody who really paid attention to the situation understands that it was the friction that he had with Eddie DeBartolo over the fact that he didn't win a playoff game for 3 years.
Yep.
That's really
Eddie. Listen, you didn't mess around with not winning in San Francisco when Eddie was around. That's the way that went.
The way that I understand it, he did fire him at some point in '87, and if it hadn't been for Carmen Policy, he would have been fired.
Yep.
Carmen Policy is the one that put that whole thing together. It's amazing what happens when you read books and you learn things from the past. Every once in a while,
absolutely.
It's good to do that. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. Sometimes actually pick up a book and crack it open. That's what most books sound like these days, right? Because we don't look at them anymore. But so that's where we are. I have a question. I had a question yesterday. I know we're getting late, and you have a show coming up pretty soon. So I wanted to. This is the perfect one for you because you're a Trey Lance guy. Everybody knows you're the Trey Lance guy, but you're also a big Kirk Cousins head. So I was asked this question yesterday, and I want to ask you what you thought. Let's say the 49ers go into this offseason. The Minnesota Vikings have a rough season. The 49ers don't have a season they want either. And Minnesota comes to the 49ers and says, hey, Kyle, I like you. We'll give you Kirk Cousins for Trey Lance straight up. You pull the trigger?
Man, okay. Let me say this. I feel like what everybody said about this team right now being ready to win, with Jimmy Garoppolo, that didn't make any sense, right? Like bypassing Trey Lance for Jimmy Garoppolo didn't make sense. I believe this team with Kirk Cousins could win a Super Bowl now, and maybe that could be possible for next year. And I might be foregoing a chance at that, to be real, because there's a chance that Trey's not ready to do any of that. But you know what I feel like this is? I'm going to be honest with you.
It's a trap.
No. You know what? Okay. It's like, let's make a deal, right? Where you have the prize in front of you and you know what it is. And it's a good prize, right? Like Kirk Cousins is a good prize, but he's not like the prize that you came on the show for. And so you're looking at it going, man, that's a really good prize. And then they walk over with the box that's like this. And you're like, I have no idea what's in it. And you could open it up and it could be like a bunch of dirt, or it could be keys to a new car and a vacation. You don't know. Well, that's what Trey Lance is right now. He's the little box. I'm intrigued by the little box. I didn't come on the show to get Kirk Cousins. I'm going for a top 7 quarterback for the next 15 years. Give me that little box. I'm taking Trey Lance.
Well, there you go. Tommy Huxley, thank you for the super chat. He says, Jessie, say it ain't so. You like burp Funyuns? Hey, it's a tough question, right? I was actually Lucas, who we shouted out earlier in the show, he's from our toolbox member from out in Austria. He asked that question to me last night at the end of the my film breakdown and caught me off guard. I didn't really think about a whole lot, and I was torn like you in the way that you're like, okay, do I go with what I know, right, or do I go with what might be over here? I chose Kirk Cousins, although I don't really like Kirk. Fair. But the thing is, here's the thing: I'm not really a Kirk Cousins believer, right? I don't believe in Kirk Cousins as much as I think you do. But I think if you're going to be offered Kirk Cousins for Trey Lance right now, with Lance coming off with the injury and the fact that he's only played 5 games in 3 years and all the, everything that's going into it, then maybe you take that flyer on Kirk Cousins and, probably end up on the wrong end of the stick. I don't know, because we don't, and it's, you made the best point. Your little analogy of the box, that's really what it is, because that's what Trey Lance is. That's what I've been saying all along, is we can have our feelings of whether he's going to be good or bad, but we're not going to know until he plays. And right now he is that little shiny box that you're like, do I want the box? Do I want what I don't know, or do I want what I? So I'm with you, and I usually play it safe. I usually go with what I know instead of taking the jump, right, and taking the leap of faith. I'm working on trying to take the leap of faith a little bit more in a lot of different areas. So I might. You're kind of, as I'm talking, you're talking me into this without saying anything. I might have to just jump over and take the little box myself.
Listen, you've got 100 people in the stands cheering for you to take the box. It's a lot of pressure, Jack. I mean, I don't know if you cannot take the box with everybody chanting "take the box." I'm just saying.
But what's in the box? What's in the box? Stupid KW 2421. Hit me up. I figured you set me up right there. Make me sound smart for a minute. Made me sound funny. But what's in the box? Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, man. That's a good one. We're gonna. Yeah, I think I'm still leaning towards Kirk Cousins, but that's a heck of a question. And Lucas over here in the toolbox, he's a member. He says thanks for he's the one that brought this up, and he says thanks for this discussion, Jack and Jesse. Hey, thank you, Lucas. This was a good one. It was a fun one because it made Jesse.
That's a really good question, and it's a really good question to ask me, because I will die on the hill. And listen, I'm not trying to say Cousins is a top 10. That's not the argument here. But he is not at all in the same tier as Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, let's be very clear about that. And I will die on that hill forever. I think he is a lot closer to being a Matthew Stafford than he is a Kirk Cousins, or a Jimmy Garoppolo. Let me just say that. So,
yeah, the only knock on him is the performance in the big games, right, in the playoffs, is that he hasn't performed in the playoffs. That's his knock. Other than that, he's going to win you a ton of games. So, I mean, take it. I think the 49ers would be better with him than Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know if they win a Super Bowl with him, like you've said, but maybe, because run the hell of the ball, and then the quarterback doesn't have to win a game for you.
Right. Absolutely. Yep, 100%.
Awesome. I know you got a show coming up, Jesse, over on your channel. Do you want to shout that out real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Last Second Sports. You can catch me over there. I'm going to be on with my guy, Sunil. We go every Tuesday. And the 49ers discussion is going to continue. So if you want more 49ers talk, head over to Last Second Sports. We'll be live here in a few minutes.
Perfect. And Jesse, you wanted to say Kirk Cousins so bad right there. You did. You're like, oh,
I do like me some Kirk Cousins. I'm not going to lie.
It's like that meme, right, where the guy's just sitting there and he's just sweating, trying to make it. That was you right there. That was perfect.
The button's there. He's like,
Exactly. So everybody, if you could do me a favor before you head out, get over to Jesse's channel. Make sure you're subscribed over there. If you're not, you probably already are, because you guys are pretty smart 49er fans for the most part. Get over there and follow Jesse's channel. He has some good content. Him and Sunil are going to put on a good show for you. And then before you leave here, hit that like button for me if you could, and then also subscribe. If you're checking this out for the first time, you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe and hit the that little bell notification so you don't miss anything. And then last but not least, get over to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. The inside the 49ers blog over there, make it a favorite on your web browser. Check it out every day. New articles come up. There's going to be one in about 20 minutes that's going to hit. I just got to put one last paragraph together, and it'll be on there. So check it out. Jesse, again, thank you so much. Always appreciate having these conversations with you.
Absolutely, brother.
All right. You have a good night, everybody. Take care. Talk to y'all soon.